يلا الربع الفري تفضل يا دكتورة.
I want to pay tribute to Sohier because I think what's amazing about her is that she has had so much impact on so many different levels. So if you go online, I had a look, you can read many amazing reviews from women who have seen Sohier and have reviewed her as a doctor. And the things that she touched upon about looking at patients holistically, psychologically, emotionally, not just looking at the medical aspects, and really providing that holistic care have really come across when you read the testimonies from so many women who've taken the trouble and the time to write about that. And obviously the areas that Sohier, she never chooses the easy route, right? The areas that Sohier has chosen to be interested in, whether we're talking about vaginal mesh or we're talking about the occurrence and then the treatment of fistulas, these are kind of Cinderella areas. They're areas that haven't had the limelight, they're areas that haven't had funding, they're areas that haven't historically had political will to put them right. And certainly in this country, the story around vaginal mesh, women were suffering in silence for years. There was nowhere they could go. The medical establishment didn't recognise that this was a problem. And you really had to be not only a doctor, but actually a campaigner and probably a pain in the bum to many people before you got your voice heard. So I think what's amazing is having had that impact on an individual interpersonal level as a doctor, but what we've seen about Sohier as well, it's not just been the local, one of us sitting in our consulting room with our patients. The impact has been local, it's been regional, it's been national, it's been international. And I think undoubtedly her experience, her Pan-African experience, her travel, her language, her religion, her colour, her sex, all of that has definitely been a help. But actually it's a lot about her as well. And it really takes a special person and a lot of stubbornness and determination to bring people together, to bring organisations together, all of them have their own vested interests, and really change policy and improve lives for people, for women, on that really international scale that she has talked about. So, there are women that she has seen herself, but actually her work has had an impact on hundreds of thousands, probably millions of women around the world as we change the way that we approach these conditions. The other thing I think I just want to comment on as well is around her comment about not having academic time for this, and I think that's a really important point. It's difficult to be successful in clinical medicine, but I think it's even more difficult to be successful in academic medicine. And for so many NHS doctors, the pressures of the job are so great and we're so busy and there's no time to be able, despite that or within that, to make the time to collaborate, to collect data, to look at outcomes, to write papers, to generate that sort of impact is a really, really difficult thing to do. It doesn't come automatically, it often doesn't come at all. And as I say, to do that from a position where none of that work is funded is really incredible. The other thing to say also is that, and by coincidence, we've come full circle in our careers again, because UCL is also my affiliated academic institution. The other thing to say also is that the recognition, for Sohier to become a professor, that also does not come automatically. Not only is that the result of a huge amount of hard work, it's also requires a lot of political support from colleagues, university support. And universities are complex places. It's not that you do X, Y, and you get to Z. It doesn't work like that. They're complex, they're capricious, they're political, all of those sorts of things. So again, being able to navigate all of that and to actually be in a position, I'm so delighted I can't tell you, for her to be in a position where she's actually recognised and feted and revered for the work that she's done and what she's achieved is absolutely right and as it should be, but it's not something that we can take for granted. So that also makes me extremely happy and proud. And then the last thing to say, I think, probably is just that it's a really difficult time. It's always a difficult time in the NHS, but I think the last 5 years have been particularly difficult with a government that doesn't seem to particularly support the NHS, and COVID, which was devastating for so many of us, And now we're faced with, I've got, I think, 6,000 people on the urology waiting list at the Royal Free. I feel like those 6,000 are sitting on my shoulders. And strikes and all of that, and it's a really, it's not an easy environment to work in. So again, I think achieving so much within that sort of landscape and context is also really, really impressive. So I think I will just stop there and say thank you very much, Sohier, for your amazing work, your amazing efforts, what you've done to improve the lives of your patients, and even much more broadly than that, as we've mentioned. And I hope very much that your success will lift all of us up as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Sari. And there is one award I forget to mention it. I think even she may have forget it. In 2000, and after the Saura, we went to Sudan. Our partner now in Sudan is the UNESCO Chair for Women in Science and Technology. And that base is Sudan. So Sudan holds two very important UNESCO chairs, technology transfer and women science and technology. Believe it or not, they are in Sudan. So in 2021, if I remember correctly, they asked for nomination, the UNESCO for Women of the Year. And I remember we nominated Sohier from WSD, and she was awarded the award by the UNESCO. And I have seen the trophy, but I don't know where it is. I can't remember, in Sudan, because the event was in Sudan. But she also got the UNESCO award for Best Women in 2021 for science and technology. We hope after this war, somehow we will find this trophy, because it has to travel here. Now, I need to move to the second remarks and reflection by Dr. Abdel Aziz. She is the Director of Public Health for Salford. And Muna has done a lot of work during the COVID. We talked about her achievement before. And I remember in one day, I can't remember, you might remember it, she was in the high level of the government during COVID, sitting on that panel with Nadim Zahawi, you remember the Minister for Vaccine. You remember the two tall men standing with the Prime Minister? She was sitting with them. So she was really representing the whole public health directors in this country. So it's really well done, ya Doctora. Wallahi. She was really, really well done. And also, I remember I have seen you in one of these things here in the country about representing the Muslim directors of public health or something. So anyway, we'll give you the floor now, but you have to come to us next time. Talk here.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. I'm delighted to comment final remarks on Professor Sohier's remarkable journey. And we're listening to that story, and I'm one of the most recent people to have met you. I can't believe today is the first day we actually meet in person, having heard so much about each other via our dear friend, Prof. Adlam. So I listened to your story, and it's really inspiring. And I wanted to kind of just think about young people in college now wanting to aspire to have a successful career, to make a difference in life. What are the ingredients? And Sohier's already given us loads of those ingredients. So one of the things I tell young people is Japanese ikigai. I've never been to Japan, but if you want a career, you have to do something you love, that you're really good at, and then get paid for it. That's remarkable. So as a young person in college, you probably only know what you love, but you don't know yet what you're good at. So you're still on a journey of self-discovery. But even at that point, I still say, use what you have. So use your networks. Don't aspire to be an international figure if you have no idea how to get there. But if you've got international connections because you're a diaspora, that's what you've got. So if you want work experience to volunteer anywhere in the world, you've already got, either a passport or family member living there. So make use of your networks. Start where you are, use what you have. I think you've been really remarkable in the way that your parents have instilled their values to you and your choice of career around women's health. So I went into public health myself because my dad actually said, he's a surgeon, he said most of the babies in Sudan actually die after I've given them an operation. They don't come for the outpatient because they've died of malaria or of diarrheal diseases. So if you can work in public health and help save lives, then as a surgeon, I can do my job. Yeah. And I've seen that triangulation in your work, Sohier. You're about saving lives as well as, doing good surgery. So I really loved that. And particularly, the way that you have in every country that you work, you actually did a degree there. You pursued what's your next step in your journey. So you described a journey in Ethiopia, you described what you did in Nigeria, what you did in Tanzania, what you did in Cambridge. And it was one story, but you were always taking the next step. And you always, didn't feel like a newcomer. How can I? You actually just really embraced what you had in the moment in Africa. You got the use of the experience. You identified with the local communities and the health problems that they had, and you did something about helping. And that's been your life story around women's health. And you're right, in public health, we do measure women's health as maternal mortality. And maternal mortality is one of the Millennium Development Goals. It is also one of the contributors into the Sustainability Development Goals. But you're absolutely right, if for every one woman who dies, that's preventable, but there are 12 others, 20 others who live with long-term effects of that. So we have to really embrace prevention. So it's not about, the surgery at the end of the day. It's about the prevention before they come into the surgery. And you're right, of course, it's a failure of healthcare that we have fistula. It's a failure of society that we have female genital mutilation. These failures, we've just learned to live with them, unfortunately, in the same way as now we're trying to survive through a war. Unfortunately, a lot of countries in the south, in Africa, the south of the world, are completely disadvantaged by conflict, corruption, a range of issues that, you can't actually get people to healthcare. You can't get healthcare to the people. So one of the things I used to work in Sudan was around mobile health, how a telephone, that mobile phone, could help save lives if it could shorten the time for a woman to get healthcare once the labor became obstructed. So there are technological solutions there. It's not all about, the clinical work. But if you start to work in this space, you get to know the people who are equally passionate about the one problem that you're trying to solve. So you bring collaborators in from mobile technology, you bring collaborators in from WHO, UNESCO, you bring in collaborators from academia, from local communities. And I just provide, Lan, you suggested I was kind of like representing the directors of public health. It was for community engagement. Because during the pandemic, community engagement is so important. Listen to the people. Again, it's listen to women. Yes. So there are synergies, and you've become really successful in public health because you've changed public health policy. I think just one of the last things I'd want to say is we are disconnected in the NHS. Public health is now in councils. The NHS, there's resource constraints. I mean, even within my local authority, we're a third of the size that we were about 10 years ago. So there's very limited money around, but what it is about people's time, and it's about what they're passionate about. So using people's time while they're in the job, so using your colleagues' time while they are in the job, making sure that they make just that one next step in their journey, and then they move on wherever they are. It is their journey. But each step that they take, they're learning under your tuition. They are making a difference while they're working with you. So I'm incredibly, jealous of your colleagues who are working with you. Professor Sohier, they see you every day, not just today. So I'd want to thank you so much for your journey and for sharing it with us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.